Welcome to Rail Fans. I'm Shane Sege. Join us as we discover Ottawa's O Train, Toronto's subway, and Montreal's metro system together. And welcome. That cut a little abruptly. Welcome to RailChat number 2. I'm Shane Sege. Joining us today is Seth McDermott and David Bellarive, who are both longtime transit enthusiasts, rail enthusiasts. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, pleasure as always.
Geez, I wasn't expecting the video clip to sort of just abort like that. That's interesting. Okay, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about, obviously there's many different projects happening currently in the Greater Toronto Area, Finch West, Eglinton Crosstown, Ontario line, which is really big. The Scarborough Subway Extension, North York Subway Extension, among many others. But we're going to try today to sort of discuss and talk about the ones that are really shoveled to the ground right now rather than ones that are still pending and working out details and all that. We might touch on them a little bit, but we're going to focus on the others. So what do you say, guys?
Yeah,
Sounds
like
good.
a plan.
Okay, so first up, we're going to talk about the Eglinton Crosstown. So obviously this is definitely a big, important project going from east to west. More of a northern alignment than the Bloor-Danforth Line 2 subway line. So what are your thoughts on this line, Seth? Obviously it has 25, it's going to have 25 stations, 19 kilometers with more than 10 kilometers underground. What are your thoughts on the Eglinton Crosstown?
I mean, it's going to be a big change in the way that Toronto moves, for sure. I have had a front row seat to the majority of the project. I live just down the street from Eglinton, so from Yonge and Eglinton, actually. So I've had a chance to watch, a lot of the developments when they were excavating the station box, removing the tunnel boring machines, because Yonge was the spot where they were extracting the machines from. So it's been interesting bit of theater over the past few years, seeing it develop. I think it's interesting how the city has grown in context of Eglinton, of Line 5, just in the sense that 15 years ago when this project was proposed, or around that time was when it was being discussed as part of the Transit City group of projects. It was a little bit hard to imagine the city growing to the extent that it has since then. And in some ways, a light rail transit line made sense for that part of the city. And then seeing now all of the development that's happening both at Yonge and Eglinton and at other parts along the line, like the Golden Mile, where the line is really a surface LRT, and then it's going to be surrounded by 40, 50-story condos, is quite something. So it's interesting to see how the context has really changed just in the course of the project being built.
David, what are your thoughts on the project?
Well, obviously, I don't live right next door to it, so it's it's a bit of a different perspective. But pretty much like Seth says, it's I think it's a really good tool for densification, especially at least for not really densification, maybe more redevelopment in a lot of places along the line. Gonna be, for me, I think the most interesting part about the line is the mix. It's really all. When you look at the map, I think it makes it even more obvious is the mix of underground and at street level of a line. So it'll recall to some of the tramway. Tramway, I guess. It feels a lot more like a tramway to me than a light metro. Like sometimes we use the term in Ottawa, called for a line in it's how it's built, but it's still gonna be massive trains when you think about it. So really looking forward to that one. I think the bigger question for me, it's good to have another east-west sort of link, because that's I think if you look at the map of Toronto, it's quite obvious that's been missing for a long time. It's for me, I think it's going to be seeing how they actually go forward with potential. I guess the potential west extension. They're starting to draw some maps of what they plan to do. So that should also be a really good addition in the future. But yeah, Crosstown definitely. It's one of those big projects that never seems to end.
It's recent. It's just coming up on 10 years. Construction started in 2011, so it's been a saga. Seeing it all happen, and yeah, it definitely compared to the Ottawa situation where you're running light rail vehicles, but they're still totally grade separated on the Confederation line. It definitely is more of a mixed character kind of system. Like it feels somewhat like a light rail line, like a streetcar, in the east, and then more like a subway in the west. I think the big thing separating it from what you might consider the traditional streetcar system is just how long the trains are going to be. They're going to be coupled, and so it'll be quite a vehicle altogether, like moving along. It'll just be interesting to see how they manage the headways along the line, because the surface section is going to be manually operated, whereas the underground section from Laird West is going to have ATC. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage the very distinct characters of the east and west halves of the line, and make it work, in a way that's coordinated and reliable.
Now, there's a couple. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, they could all, like, looking at the line. I think most of the demand is going to be obvious. Like I would guess among the underground sections. Like obviously, there's still going to be demand on the eastern part of the line, like from Laird all the way to Kennedy. I guess they could always do short stopping trains and just have a different. They could potentially do that. Actually, have a different service pattern between Mount Dennis and Laird, interline trains or something like that. But I kind of feel like sometimes looking at that, there's going to be a service mismatch. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, yeah, that's part of the whole way that the area around the line has grown up, right? Because in the east, that's sort of what it was expected to be, right? The eastern part was expected to be a little bit lower, but now that part along Golden Mile is seeing some of the densest development on the line. Like the entire strip of big box stores is expected to become like 40, 50-story condos. So soon it's going to have more development than the western part of the first phase, which is an interesting switch, compared to what was expected in 2011.
So, I mean, some of the interesting aspects as well, moving on from just the emplacement of the line, how it's being, maybe furnished is not the best terminology, but the pictures that they've been posting lately about how it's going to be covered with grass, that's definitely, very interesting to see. That's something that we don't really see very often in North America. That seems to be more of a European overseas kind of thing. So that's definitely great to see, as well as the imagery, especially that they've been sharing at the junctions where it transitions from underground to above ground and whatnot, how it really swoops into the landscape and into the area and all that. Very impressive. But definitely a line that has a lot of significance, a lot of importance, a lot riding on it.
Yeah, definitely.
And now we can also talk about the west extension. So what's currently being built is what we just saw on the previous map. Now there's a proposal to extend it further west. Ultimately, there's potential of it going to the Pearson International Airport, which would definitely provide commuters an alternative to using the Up Express. So that's definitely something that could work. Whether people do that or not, or they prefer the direct connection, but it's a different way of getting there.
I mean, it's definitely, so it's beyond the proposal stage. They've awarded the tunneling contract, and they're preparing the excavation site for the launch. The tunnel boring machines are expected to arrive and start working in the spring. So they're really pushing forward with the schedule. I think part of it is to get digging underway before the election in 2022. There's a strategic timing to how quickly they're trying to move with a number of these contract signings, but I think ultimately it will be a good thing for the area. Part of the political balancing act that has to happen, of course, is that that part of Etobicoke has traditionally been, a fairly wealthy, leafy part of the city. So there's been a lot of debate about whether the line should be underground or at grade. That part of Eglinton, for the longest time, was a very wide corridor that had been left unbuilt because it was planned to be an expressway back in the 60s. And they never ended up building that expressway. But what it meant was that area ended up being quite underdeveloped and like sort of wide open. Eglinton along there felt like more like a country road. Like it didn't even have sewers. It was just, ditches on the side of a road. So to see now them building an underground light rail line is like a very big change, but it has to do with a lot of what the local community wanted or didn't want for the line. And the other factor is the GTAA, the Greater Toronto Airport Authority. They are very much in favor of this line. They want the part that's shown in yellow on that map to be planned more or less immediately, like as soon as possible, so that, even if it doesn't open at the same time as the part to Renforth, it can just carry on building. Almost like the way that the Western extension is in itself, right? Where the main part of the line isn't even open. They're already planning the Western extension. And the GTA actually recently, there was just an article this week actually from Mississauga, a local newspaper, that the GTA wants the Finch LRT extended to the airport as well. So when we talk about that in a couple minutes, there'll be something to say about that. Like the airport authority is quite heavily focused on expanding transit access to the airport. So it's nice to see that they're on board with that, because a few years ago when Up Express was being first planned, the airport authority was quite a bit more skeptical of transit, because they make a lot of their revenue from parking, and they sort of saw transit as a threat to that business model. But now it seems the tables have really turned on their approach to ground transportation.
Now, what kind of timeline are we looking at for this west extension, Seth, if you can just enlighten people?
Yeah, so like I said, the tunnel boring machines are expected to arrive and start digging in 2022, hopefully spring. We'll see how well they're able to adhere to that. And the extension is supposed to open in around 2031. That's the plan. It's mostly tunneled, as you can see on the map. Everything that's in orange is tunneled. The tunnel boring machines, as far as we understand, are only going from that part by Renforth to just east of Royal York. The link into the existing crosstown at the east end at Mount Dennis is a little bit too short to deploy a tunnel boring machine just for that, like couple hundred meters. So I think they're just going to mine that part out. That's my understanding. And then the blue segment is an elevated portion. The community has, like, every time there's a public consultation meeting, I go to a lot of them for this project. And every time there's one of those consultations, everyone's like, well, why can't you bury the whole thing? Well, the reason is that whole area in blue is a floodplain for the Humber River, and burying it would cost over $1 billion extra beyond the cost of the project already. So Metrolinx just keeps saying, no, sorry, we're not doing that, especially because, there's a resiliency issue there, right? Like, we're already experiencing the effects of climate change as it is, and, we're seeing wetter and wetter years. And of course, the Humber River was famous for its role in the death toll of Hurricane Hazel in the 50s. So there's no desire to build a tunnel under the river at that spot. Yeah. Also, sorry, I forgot. One more thing I thought about. The station at Jane is a little bit unique, because if you look at it on a map, because it's in that floodplain, there's literally nothing built around it. All four corners of that intersection are parks. So that's going to be one odd feature of the line, is that almost 100% of that station's ridership is going to be from transfers just from the bus network, and you will get no transit-oriented development around there. Like you can't build in that area. So it's quite an odd situation that we've got going on there, but it'll be unique in the system anyway.
Now, the next project is the Finch West LRT, and I interviewed Wade O'Leary, who's the vice president of the project, about a month and a half ago. Talked about this to great length. This one right here consists of 18 stops, 11 kilometers. There's an above ground, it's all above ground alignment. Humber College is below grade, and Finch West obviously is an underground connection to the existing Line 1 University line of the TTC. This line is going to be using the Alstom Citadis Spirit trains, same ones as in Ottawa. So obviously, depending on how closely people follow the situation in Ottawa, that might be a little bit of
cause for concern.
Cause for concern. However, the benefit to this is that Ottawa has been diagnosing and working with these trains since the line opened in 2019, and a couple years before that, the Finch West, we're still only thinking it's going to open sometime in 2023. So that still gives more time for the bugs to be sorted out. The trains are being built at the Alstom facility in Brampton, same as where the Ottawa trains are being built currently. So hopefully lessons learned are applied back and forth to help make sure that the Finch West maybe launches a little more reliably. As well, Finch West being at grade, surface, intersecting with live intersections and all that, rather than the situation in Ottawa where it's automatic train control, segregated, grade separated. That probably will play into maybe it being a little more reliable as well, less stuff or less things to go wrong, lower speeds. David, what do you think about that? Finch West.
It's more like I'm trying not to judge too much because of the train set, because we almost had the let's recall that it was a question of whether or not Bombardier could deliver the trains for Crosstown on time. So that was always the backup option. Beyond the trains themselves, I think it's a really good addition to the area. It's lacking transit. I think it was overdue to have some lines that are further north instead of just relying on GO or further north. I mean, we're mostly at this point extending westwards and then upwards, but it's a good starting point, I guess. I feel like that's a line that they could easily add on to in either direction. So it's a really good starting ground for connections. Brings people onto line 1 now. There's always, I guess, the famous question of, is there still enough capacity to have more lines connecting onto line 1 as it is right now? I know ATC is going to help down the road. I know it's I guess it's still a bit of a question of how much induced demand they can afford to add onto the line during peak hours, but it's one of those, I guess we'll have to see in practice what it does for the community. But the line itself, undoubtedly, in my mind, it's a great addition, especially with the. I'm really glad also that they went to Humber College and not just cut it short, because I think we've seen a bunch of projects that cut short of the good connection point. I think it makes for a great connection for a lot of people there. So,
yeah, I think the line definitely fulfills a number of social objectives of transit planning. You think about transit as being, some cases, a cause for redevelopment, in other cases sort of a vanity project. Well, in this case, I think it really fulfills a lot of social objectives, because the northwestern corner of the city has some of the least connected areas in Toronto proper, and also some of the areas most in need economically of connections to transportation and connections to employment. It goes right through the middle of Jane and Finch, so it serves a number of sort of noble goals when it comes to developing the line. It just needs to. I think we've seen a couple of tensions on that front regarding Metrolinx's choices of how to in some ways dispose of the lands that they didn't need for the LRT. So it's something where the community could stand to benefit from it. There just needs to be a focus on that, as opposed to it being more of a tool for redevelopment or vanity, as the way some other projects have been discussed. I think it has the potential to serve the community really well. Like, it's going to provide a more reliable connection than the Finch West bus, and it's great that it does link to Humber College as well, because it's like you've got education, you've got employment, you've got like all these sort of like good ingredients along the route to make it a strong anchor for Northwestern Toronto. Right now, so there isn't anything official on the table yet, but of course the GTA wants Finch West extended to Pearson, which is just off the sort of bottom left corner of that image. And on the way, they want it, or they're hoping anyway, that it would hit a new GO station at Woodbine Racetrack, which is just sort of at the bottom left corner of that image. So if that happened, that would provide even more connection for the line, because you'd have a GO interchange and the airport connection, which both of those are major employment zones. So, you see even more of this function of almost like a northwestern orbital for the city in a way, because it links a lot of routes out in the northwestern corner of the 416. So it'll be interesting. It'll be quite interesting. And there's a question right now about whether Finch West might actually even open before Eglinton. I don't know how true that might be, because there's a lot of resources being put into Eglinton right now to finish it on time. But certainly Finch is stampeding along. They've got the maintenance and storage facility built. They've got the track connections out to the street built. They've built I think the majority of the track that crosses intersections in the area. So they got all of the traffic impacts out of the way, and now they're working on the portions of the track that are just mid-block. So this line seems like it is well on track to open when they said it was going to open. Like, it's quite far along. It's nice to see a project actually being delivered on time.
It feels like we don't see those anymore for transit projects, but yeah.
Because you see so many like surprises on subway projects, right? Because you're digging underground, you always come up with surprises. Finch is nice because there's like not a lot of sources where surprises could come from. It's just at the surface, pretty straightforward, and the parts that are tunneled. Finch West obviously was only ripped up a few years ago for the Toronto York Subway Extension, so they already knew what the ground conditions were, and they already roughed in a station there, so that's easy peasy. And then Humber College is pretty much entirely greenfield. Like, it's very suburban out there, so you're not running into like a lot of crazy utilities that you didn't know were there, or past remnants of other stuff. So it seems like they're able to proceed without many of the challenges that have sort of come up and surprised projects like Eglinton.
Yeah, it's what. Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, which is good. They got quite lucky with it.
Yeah, it's one of those projects that it's building like where there's dense. Well, I wouldn't call it exactly density everywhere along the line, but it's not too dense that you cannot build without disturbing too many things. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like one of those white elephant kind of project that just like we were mentioning, like a vanity project that's meant for nothing. Like that line. Its biggest strength is, I think, especially in the post-COVID world, it's not just going to be a commuter line to get people from residential households to commute to downtown. Like, it's actually going to be serving, like you mentioned, it's going to help serve in a lot of different areas, like with different types of purposes, especially if you see it go all the way to the to Pearson Airport. I think like it's one of those things that please bring as many connections towards Pearson in that part of town, because it's been lacking for way too long. Anyone that ever had to catch a bus to go to Pearson knows how enjoyable it is, to put it mildly. I'm really not a big fan of how it was before the Up Express. It was way overdue, but anyway, that's off topic at this point. Obviously, Ken has no connection. Let's not forget that's still a proposal more than it's not shovel ready by any means for that part at this point. But as all it's a really great starting point. Either further east, further west, south, go from it. They could also potentially branch out on it. I don't know where exactly I would get them. Like, I would see them branch out further north or south, but it's a really good starting point, and I like that.
So moving on, We're going to talk about the big one right now, the Ontario
Hmm.
line. Now,
It's
the
a big one.
Ontario line is 15 stops, approximately 16 kilometers. Once completed, it will offer a 30-minute trip from Exhibition Place through the heart of downtown to the Ontario Science Center. That's at the top right corner. Now, this has obviously been something that's been debated for, well, I'm sure Seth can enlighten us on that in a moment. But this, the relief line, the Ontario line, Doug Ford's been really pushing, subways, and building this line. There's definitely a demand for it because, as you can see on the map, the original University line is the U-shaped part. The Bloor Danforth is the gray line that crosses above. There's nothing that crosses east to west that far down that isn't really a streetcar that is high capacity transit. So this definitely relieves the University line to get people in and out to cross that very busy, dense, downtown core of the city. So it's very important, and it's good to see that it's moving ahead. It's interesting that it's going to start at what was once Ontario Place, although that is scheduled to see some pretty radical redevelopment over the years. So I'm definitely looking forward to this. A lot of underground, some surface, and elevated, especially further up in the northeast portion there, because I believe it's, how can you call it, like wetland, I think?
It's valley land.
Valley?
So yeah, so everywhere that you see that's green in the northwestern part of that map is very deep ravines. So the line ends up going on a couple of quite high bridges to get over the Don Valley. It's that northern end of the line is going to be quite impressive on an engineering level. Like it I have visions of the SkyTrain a little bit in the northeastern corner. But yeah, you were mentioning that that's been under debate for quite some time. Well, a tunneled transit option of some sort under Queen Street was Toronto's first subway proposal, actually, ever. Back in 1912, they wanted to build a streetcar subway under Queen Street, similar to the Boston Green Line or like the Center City Tunnel in Philadelphia. And so it's been on the books for more than 100 years at this point to build something of some kind under Queen. And that was reflected, of course, in the Yonge subway. They built a roughed-in station under Queen to handle east-west traffic. At the time, it was still expected to be like a streetcar vehicle type that would run under Queen and then pop up to the surface outside of downtown on both shoulders. Since then, of course, the Ontario line has been proposed as a light metro. So the station that's already there under Queen wouldn't be large enough to handle the kind of vehicles that are expected to run on the Ontario line, and it wouldn't even really be wide enough to handle streetcars of a modern standard. The platforms are quite narrow, and a lot of that area has been sort of cannibalized for the works that made Queen Station accessible. They punched elevator shafts and stuff through there, so that level is going to end up being more of like a transfer area as opposed to the actual future station. The future station is going to be dug even deeper than that, and all of the Ontario line that is tunneled through downtown is expected to be mined. So no surface impacts to the streetcars, everything, with the exception of Queen Station, which they will need to close that intersection for about 4 years in order to demolish a lot of what's under the road right now to build that station. But yeah, it'll be a gigantic construction project for downtown. I'm happy to hear that most of it's going to be mined, because otherwise that would have been crazy, especially with the way it's supposed to cut across at the western flank, because you'd be cutting off Queen Street, King Street, Spadina, and Bathurst. So 4 of the busiest streetcar lines in the city. So it's nice to see that most of those won't be impacted. Just thinking about like what this map looks like versus the current plans. Basically, the current plan is just about what you see here. All that's changed is there's been slight movement of the tunnel portals, so a little bit more or less of the line at the different tunnel portal locations is supposed to stay underground, just dealing with site conditions like grade changes, that kind of thing. But more or less, this still is the the plan as it's expected to unfold. And yeah, this is another one where the Ontario government is really focused on moving forward with it. There are 2 contracts out right now for tender for this line, so we can expect those to be awarded in the upcoming few months. So there'll be sort of binding agreements in place. The last section, which is the northern section, doesn't have that agreement in place yet, but it will soon, or soon in project management time, like timelines, like a couple of years that'll be awarded. I think the big thing with the Ontario line is the connectivity that it offers to both manage the capacity issues that are at Bloor-Yonge. So the whole impetus for the line originally, back when it was still the relief line that the TTC was planning, was to avoid all of the capacity constraints at Bloor-Yonge that are turning it into actually fairly unsafe situation to be in during rush hours. As well as, one thing I think that the Ontario line has as a strength that sets it above the previous relief line plan is really that northern extension. That a similar plan was expected to be part of phase 2 of a relief line to extend it further north. But pushing it into phase 1 is great to see, because some of the neighborhoods in the part of the line that are elevated, where you see like Thorncliffe Park, Flemington Park, those neighborhoods are very big landing pads for new immigrants to Canada. They have some of the highest concentration of new immigrants in the country. And so being able to serve those populations with really high quality rapid transit is quite a big benefit to the community overall. There have been some tensions regarding the placement of the maintenance and storage facility in that area. Folks concerned about the impact to local businesses, some degree of displacement around there. But largely, I think, just reading the situation, it seems that they're trying to work with the community to figure out how best to fit the line through so that you can achieve those kinds of benefits that would really actually help link that area of the city up. Because right now, that area of the city, if you look at all of the valleys that surround it, it's quite difficult to get to that part of the city. Like, the bridges that go through there are constantly congested. There's a lot of idling traffic. Like, air quality isn't great through there. So I'm hopeful that they'll come up with a solution that works for everyone and can serve that community a lot better than it's currently getting.
Now, can you also talk a little bit about, recently it was in the news that there's going to be a fairly sizable portion of Queen Street that's going to be closed due to the construction. Can you talk a little bit about that and the impacts and what's happening with that?
Yeah, so I skipped over, and I probably didn't give it all the time that it deserved. The part around Queen Station, so on either side of Yonge Street for about a block, needs to be closed for about 4 years during the construction to demolish a lot of old, sort of outdated underground infrastructure under that area, because the existing Line 1 station is almost right below the pavement. Like, it's really tight to the surface, and there was kind of no way to deal with that that old station that's under the street, the roughed-in east-west platforms and the mezzanines on both sides of Queen Station, without demolishing a lot of stuff under there. Osgood on the University line doesn't have the same issue because it was built a little bit later. They didn't put in as much roughed-in infrastructure to begin with, and it's also a bit deeper than Queen. So that area is sort of in the clear. But between about Bay and Victoria Street is where the disruption is going to be. And as part of that, Metrolinx has actually offered to pay for the cost of rebuilding some of the streetcar tracks in the area on Richmond and Adelaide streets to allow the Queen streetcars to divert around so they wouldn't be cut in half effectively, which is really good to hear, because that was, I think, one of the big fears of a lot of transit fans, a lot of enthusiasts in Toronto, was that the Queen streetcar was going to be somehow perhaps irrevocably affected by that construction, that like those years of disruption would serve as like a permanent injury to the line in some way. So it's nice to hear that Metrolinx is fronting the cost of rerouting the streetcars. And some of the tracks on Richmond and Adelaide haven't seen regular service since the 1950s. And they're all cut up. Like every time there needed to be utility work or something, they've just like sawed right through the tracks. So like they're definitely not passable now. Like they'd have to be all ripped out. But it's great to hear that, part of the Ontario Line project, one of the side benefits is that they're going to actually be in some ways strengthening the streetcar network, and that those diversionary routes will be then from then on in place permanently. Which it's overall, I think that's a positive community benefit. So I think the 4 years of disruption right at Yonge and Queen, in some ways, is sort of worth the trade-off of the benefits we'll get in the end, both to the subway network and the streetcar network.
So, I think that's pretty much all we need to say about the Ontario Line right now. It's obviously
it's a complex project. We could probably come back to it in a later, if there's another discussion at some point, because there's always new things happening with it.
Yeah. Honestly, just to add a few more things real quick, I don't think it'll be. Like they might have the contracts ready before the election, but I don't think they. I don't think we're at the point we can call the whole thing shovel ready. Like it's it's close, but it's not something that like tomorrow morning you can put a shovel in the ground and actually build a line that's coherent. Like the choice, for example, of light rail trains. Something tells me it's going to be something along the lines of. In my mind, when I picture the line, I picture it as a REM kind of thing. Like that's how it feels in my mind. Like the moment they started saying, no, it's not going to be a metro, it's going to be a light rail. That's what I picture in my mind. So.
I've noticed some confusion between the terminology between like Toronto and like this part of Ontario versus, I would say, the Ottawa area and Quebec when it comes to the terminology around these things. And I think it might be a little bit of a English-French split as well as to like what those terms mean. Because when REM gets called a light rail project, everyone here just kind of screws up our noses like, what are you talking about? That's a metro. It's a light metro. Because like here we call that a light metro system, and that's what the Ontario Line is being described as. So very very REM-esque is the idea. And you're right, it won't be shovel ready because part of the contracts that are being awarded is actually the detailed design. So there isn't a detailed design to build yet. It's not like Eglinton where there's a design that's already been sort of figured out and someone's just going to come along with a tunnel boring machine and start digging.
And like for me, the biggest point of concern is like basically if you look on the maps, like the green parts, so like the parts that are shared alignment with the Go CN Via Rail lines, like obviously with HFR, that seems pretty much certain at this point. I'll put it in big quotation marks there. Like I get it, like they need a corridor to use, and it's probably the easiest place to implement the line. I'm just like I think a worry that's been mentioned a few times in the past, like is the potential for future increase in service on the other type of services. Like it's already used quite heavily as a segment, so.
Well, it's going to be on its own tracks. It's using the corridor, but it'll. So the Go line on the eastern part of downtown is being expanded to 4 tracks by itself, and then the Ontario line will be on another 2. So it's going to be quite a wide corridor. So I think we're building in a decent amount of future capacity when it comes to like you got two tracks for a metro and then 4 tracks for all the mainline services. So it's going to be quite something through that part. That's going to be quite a rail fanning spot. Because you're gonna have a train passing like more than once every minute
pretty much through
that eastern part.
Like it kind of obviously like with the frequency they're talking about anyway on the Ontario Line, I think their plan like on paper is pretty much to at least based on what you can do with current automatic train control systems is pretty much go full capacity right away. So that's like that's gonna be interesting to see, like, because I think there was saying 2.5 minutes between turn or something like that. at opening,
1.5.
Well, yeah, okay, so yeah, they're going for the full 90-second that you see with current train-based control system. So, like, I think that's more like what I was going for in terms of capacity. Is like the line is already going to run at theoretical max for those kind of systems. So it'll be like, I guess it could be a concern down the road, but for the time being, yeah. There's always parallel service, at least for with Go. There's in terms of speed, I don't think it's gonna be the main option for every commuter coming from the eastern end of the city to go downtown. Like, it's gonna be an option. Well, it's gonna be an alternative, and I think that's the strongest point about the Ontario line. It's an alternative to what's already existing, but it's also serving communities that like so far at just the tramway and more limited the streetcar. Sorry, they had more limited options in the first place. It's a proper dedicated corridor just for trains, so I think that's a good step up there.
So now we're going to move on to the one that I find really interesting, the Scarborough Subway Extension. Now, I talked to Seth about the Scarborough RT, or the Line 3, a couple months ago. We talked about that to great depth. Encourage people to take a look at those videos if you haven't already. This is significant because it's going to be effectively replacing Line 3 in its entirety, reducing it to essentially 3-4 stations over the existing 5 or 6.
Yeah, Line 3 is 6 stations right now, and they're going to replace. Yeah, well, including Kennedy. Sorry, 5 stations. 5 stations are going to close. 5 stations are closing. 3 stations are opening. That's the easiest way to try to figure out how to not double count Kennedy in that discussion.
So the significance with this is that the Scarborough RT Line 3 technology was never meant to last this long. Not going to dwell too much onto the points that we've already discussed before. Again, go see the video if you want to learn more about it. But suffice it to say, the trains are long overdue. They're, falling into a state of disrepair. They'd either need to be replaced, or a big, massive overhaul would need to be done. Clearly, they decided they don't want to go that route. They'd rather extend the subway line, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because if people are coming into that area, the people that would be riding the Line 3, if they're coming in via the Line 2 already, let's say for the most part, extending the line further gives them a more direct connection rather than having to transfer, go upstairs, go into an elevated system that can be up or down very frequently due to the age of the infrastructure, due to the issues that it's incurred over the years. But it'll definitely be a disappointing moment to see that line close, because it was a precursor and one of the early models of linear induction motors, which then became very popular and heavily used in Vancouver with the SkyTrain, the Expo line, the Millennium line. So, it's interesting to see that change happen. The other point too is that it's going to take approximately 10 years before the subway extension opens, and the Scarborough RT is going to be closing in 2023. So there's going to be about a approximately 7-year gap where the service is going to be compensated with buses. So that definitely causes a bit of concern to people. But obviously, I think in general, it's a good move to extend the main subway line rather than, overhauling or try to make work what they already had, which clearly was on its last legs, and they didn't seem to have any intention of doing anything with it. But it's unfortunate that there's going to be a 7-year gap, and that there's some stations being removed. But for a heavy line subway system, you can't have the stations as closely packed, or it wouldn't make as much sense like you have with the RT.
Yeah, So I would definitely encourage people to go check out the videos that we did on the RT, because I think that it's good to get a sense of the overall history of why the line existed, what was so unique and groundbreaking about it, and then also sort of what the state of that line is right now. I'd say for the subway part, the TTC is in the middle of consulting with the public as to what bus replacement option they are most comfortable with, what people think will be the best for them for the next 7-8 years. Whether that looks like replacing or taking away lanes of traffic rather, and turning it into like a busway, and then on what cross street they'd want to see that be put in place. So it's just going to be it's all about a balancing act as to how transit in the East End is going to work while they build the subway. One of the big concerns with, or considerations anyway, with the replacement bus service is that Kennedy is going to have quite a bit of construction going on around it for the subway extension. And so how do you get all of those, like how that big stream of buses is supposed to get down to Kennedy and not get impacted by all of the street closures that might need to take place around there.
Yeah.
So that will be a big logistical operation in itself. I think the hope is that Line 5 being open by then will help sort of free up some space in the current bus terminal at Kennedy Station, with the Eglinton buses not being there anymore, and that there will be an opportunity to kind of divert some of the traffic around there. The other unique thing just about the subway project itself is that this will be the first tunnel in Toronto that uses a single bore tunnel. There's one tunnel boring machine that's doing the whole thing. So it won't feel quite Montreal-esque as far as I know, because they're going to put in a central like firewall in between the two tracks once it's built. But the stations, by the looks of it, will be one large open archway. So a little bit Montreal-ish. That tunnel boring machine is in the middle of being built. Metrolinx released sort of a photos on their website recently that it's under construction and will be delivered to Toronto in the spring, and again will be launched in spring 2022. The launch site at Shepherd is being prepared right now for it, and it'll be a unique project in its own right, because it's very different construction techniques than I think a lot of the Toronto area construction industry is used to seeing. It'll also be some of the deepest stations in the city, especially the one around Lawrence, because you might be able to see on that map there's sort of a green ribbon crossing the line just north of Lawrence. That is another ravine, and in order to deal with that, they're actually going under the ravine in that case, and so it'll be more than 40 meters deep at its lowest point, and so that'll be quite an interesting like civil works project to make it all happen. But I think the subway is it's going to be of benefit to that area. It's just unfortunate in some ways the timeline that it took to get here.
Yeah, it's bad timing. That's because you're stuck in that weird, like assuming Crosstown opens on time at this point, which is it doesn't seem to be a certain thing. Like it's definitely one of those things that it's just poor timing all around. Like it's just gonna be. I feel bad for the people living around there, because they've been stuck in a lot of work, like obviously with Crosstown, and then they're going back into more work with this, and with the Scarborough LRT being decommissioned at some point. So like it's not ideal, but like I think it's when you look at the map, like in the bigger picture, it makes sense. It makes sense long term. It's capacity that needs to exist, like in one form or another. So like if they made it clear the RT is not being replaced by itself, like it's probably the best alternative there is right now to it. Like it's gonna be painful though. That there's no doubt. Like.
Now, another subway extension is the Yonge North. So that's going to extend the Line 1, or the University Line, further towards the north. And it's going to consist of 4 stations, approximately 8 kilometers in length, which doesn't look like 8 kilometers from this map here, but it's going to cover a significant amount of ground. What can you tell us a bit about this line, Seth?
Yeah, so this line is a little bit less advanced in planning than the other ones. Most of the other lines have had some sort of contracts, at least, put on the street, if not already signed. Yonge took a little bit more time to get to the stage where it is now, partially because of that big curve you see at the north end of the route. Originally, the line was supposed to just go straight up Yonge and then turn off right at the end to hit Langstaff Go. But then Metrolinx came out with this new option of swerving to the east and then popping the line up to the surface when it was supposed to be entirely underground before. So that is a design change that took more than a year to sort out, and so it's kind of extended the project timeline. Part of the motivation for that is the project cost. This particular extension is looking to be quite expensive as a result of needing to cross the Don Valley and a couple of other geological features. And so as a result, the stations to be included in the line are also still sort of up in the air. You can see on that map there that Royal Orchard and Cummer Drury have been grayed out, and that's because it's not clear whether those stations are going to be included in the line or at least like roughed in order to try to contain the cost of getting across the I think it's the east branch of the Don Valley there. But yeah, the impetus for this line, I mean, you know, Finch has been the northern terminus of the Yonge line since 1974, and it has one of the largest and busiest bus corridors going down Yonge from York Region into Finch Station. And an extension of the Yonge line has been talked about for quite some time as a result of that. I mean, you have buses pouring in at a very high rate during the rush hour period, and so it would be of large benefit to York Region to finally get this line in place. It was held back by the need to develop the Relief Line / Ontario line, just because the capacity issues at Bloor Yonge meant that a North Yonge extension would not have been feasible. So planning for this line has been tied up in the Ontario line development. So these probably won't end up being able to open until they'll need to open together. There will need to be a plan to kind of shift a lot of that traffic away from Bloor Yonge in order to make room for the people coming down Yonge from the York Region area. And part of the goal for the new vision for the project with this big swerve out to the east is also to turn more of the areas around Langstaff Go into transit-oriented communities, transit-oriented development, where a lot of it right now, you can see on that map, it's sort of shaded in yellow where they say urban growth center. A lot of that area right now is a mix of industrial and big box commercial. So they're trying to turn that into a new center for Richmond Hill, similar to what you'd see with Vaughan Center or Scarborough Center or Square One in Mississauga. Like it's going to be another one of these satellite downtown areas is the intent. So that's a basic overview. That was really fast.
Well, it's definitely a line to follow and to see how the design, the location of the stations, the path, the alignment that it takes evolves. Because the Royal York, that was something that we learned about, I think, in the past couple months, right? Where it was going to be potentially deleted from the plan. I think.
Royal Orchard Station. Yeah. So, Royal Orchard has always been a little bit of a question mark, because if you look at the area like on a satellite view, there isn't a whole lot of development there, and there isn't a whole lot of opportunity to develop around there, because a lot of it is lands for the river. So there's always sort of a question of like the wisdom of putting a station there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
So now we need to make a decision if we continue on with a couple others.
Maybe we'll maybe just name them so that we recognize that we haven't forgotten about them.
Let's do Rafale kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we haven't forgotten them.
No. So we're going to give a special shout out to the Waterfront East LRT project. So that's a line that's going to go from Union Station down to the waterfront and finish at the Paulson Loop. Obviously, there's a couple different plans for this. We'll see what happens as time goes on.
It's a big, this line, I would say this is one to watch for because of the community building element of it. That whole area that it's crossing in the eastern end is currently post-industrial, like sort of wasteland dealing with a lot of contamination issues. And the idea is to turn this into a completely new community that's almost the same size, like in area, as the existing downtown. So this is a significant project to watch for. That's all I'll say about that, because we gotta We got a motor.
It's reclaiming a lot of industrial land, like around Portlands and stuff like that. Like there's so many opportunities. But yeah, let's go.
So next is the Euro-Ontario LRT. That's going to be going, from north-south, Brampton to Mississauga.
Yep, that route it's also under construction. It's supposed to open 2024. Currently, a lot of the construction with that has been utility relocation and building the southern station at Port Credit, which, similar to Finch, the end of the line is going to be sunken. So that's where a lot of the effort has been so far. And that line looks... I don't know about the 2024 date necessarily, but it looks like, now at least they've mobilized along the majority of the route. You can see that there is at least ground being broken. So hopeful that it will be progressing at some point soon. You'll be able to see a little bit more evidence of it on the street.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those... Yeah, sorry, go for it.
No,
it's one of those stories of prove me wrong. Like, I don't believe it's opening 2024, but the sooner the better.
The MSF is built. The MSF is great. Now it just needs a line. Now it just needs a line to serve.
So just to give people a bit of perspective there that aren't familiar with it, 19 stations or stops. It'll include 4 major transit hubs, 18 kilometers from north to south, and it will link 6 transit systems and rail connections along its route. So obviously it really will be very well connected with existing infrastructure, existing transit, and existing rail like GO and whatnot.
It's important.
Then,
it's Peel Region's Young Line, basically, because here Ontario is Peel Region's main north-south thoroughfare. So it is big in its own right.
And finally, we're going to talk about the Hamilton Light Rail Transit. So this right here has been very contentious project because it's been on, it's been off, it's been canceled. It's now seems to have been, hopefully for good, resurrected, and will move forward. Hopefully that they do follow through with this, because it's definitely difficult for the people in the Hamilton region, where they're not necessarily promise something, but they get their hopes up, and then at the last minute it seemed like it was canceled, and now it's coming back. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth with it, and it was quite rough for people in the city because they had started moving forward with it. Metrolinx had already spent about $150 million on property acquisition, demolition of buildings along the route where they needed to widen the roads, and then the project was canceled in 2019, and it surprised everyone who was already working on the project. So it was quite a soap opera of a situation, and then just in the last couple of weeks, a binding $3.4 billion memorandum of understanding was signed between the province, the feds, Hamilton. I'm not sure if Leuna actually signed that, but I know Leuna is contributing to the line's construction. So it's, by all accounts, now it is going forward. The provincial government made this complete about face as to how they position this line, from canceling it to then calling it the 5th priority project in the region, almost putting it right alongside the Ontario line, Yonge North, Scarborough, and Eglinton West. So it underwent quite a dramatic reversal of fortunes in the best way, in a way. So we'll see what happens to it in the next couple of years as they mobilize.
Well, hopefully it does see the light of day, and it definitely comes to pass and become a reality for the people in the Hamilton. So let's keep hoping for that. But
it's overdue.
So that concludes our first portion of the live stream about Toronto Transit. Now, I'm sure there's some people that want to hear us talk a little bit about.
Let's talk about something. Let's talk about something that's not Toronto, because I mean, I was saying before we got on the live stream with everyone that the GTA really has like an embarrassment of riches right now in terms of all the projects that are underway. It's really hard to fathom the scale of what's going on. But let's shift away from the GTA. because there are other parts in Canada that need some attention.
So I'm sure people are aware, especially in Ottawa, and for those that aren't outside of Ottawa, Ottawa's O Train Line 1 suffered its second derailment in 6 weeks. It's unfathomable to believe that it happened twice in 6 weeks, but sure enough, it came to pass almost a week ago today. It happened last Sunday, just shortly after lunch. Westbound train was, we're being told now, approaching Tremblay Station. That's where the Via Rail station is. And it was already, the TSB has reported that it was already in a derailed state before it even reached that station. Took on passengers, let people off at Tremblay, continued on for another 400 to 500 meters, crossing a rail bridge over Riverside Drive before finally coming to a stop after creating a little bit of carnage along the road, taking out signal boxes, destroying the switch point. It's not even clear what more damaged, but
Mm-hmm.
as you can see, the pantograph is like straight up in the air. It's quite the image to see.
Good thing you didn't rip the overhead down.
I know. But I mean, if there's image, well, David actually went out the same day even.
Yeah.
And took some pictures, and there's even a concrete shaft or manhole or some sort of thing that it even displaced the top of the concrete with the manhole like half a foot.
Yeah.
I don't have pictures in the presentation right now, but the damage at first seemed to be maybe superficial, and then afterwards they admitted that, okay, you know what, it's going to take about potentially 3 weeks at least just to get the line back to full operation. There might be a partial service in the meantime, but it begs the questions now: how can you have 2 derailments in 6 weeks? So Transit Commission, multiple councillors, multiple citizen commissioners there's sort of a bit of a infight going on right now. We want to have more information. Can we have more meetings? No, you don't need to have more meetings. We're not going to have political theater. So hopefully this thing addresses itself properly. The line has been open now for over 2 years and let's say 11 days, because it opened 2019 September 14th. So hopefully things start moving ahead. Obviously it's a new line. Issues are bound to happen on any line. It's just the frequency at which they all seem to happen back to back to back and stack up like that it just creates an untenable situation for people who are relying on the service. Now we're back to the replacement bus service that just is no substitute for the train, if we can be honest here.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough to see the struggle happening with Ottawa. Like, I was there on opening day. I got the first westbound train out of Tremblay, so can sort of picture that part of the line pretty well. And like, it's really unfortunate to have all of this transpiring in such a short like back-to-back kind of time frame. I hope that this prompts some really deep investigation into a number of the engineering decisions made with the line, a number of the maintenance decisions, like how this could continue to happen, because at a certain point you really have to think about the impact of public confidence. Like the project wasn't exactly not controversial, and it does a disservice to the image of rail transit in Canada, and especially, I would say, light rail transit, especially, just because even though it's a grade separated line, people like to focus on the fact that it is still using light rail technology. At a time when I think that we really need to be looking at rapid transit expansion in the country, and at a time when it's being hotly debated in a lot of Canadian cities, Quebec City, Gatineau. There's now a discussion in Waterloo region about building another extension to the ION system, and beyond. There's a lot of discussion around light rail as a transit mode in Canada, and it's sort of the hot button issue right now. And it's unfortunate that the O train is picking this moment to do that the fact that it like kept going through Tremblay station, like the fact that it kept picking up people after the train was derailed and they didn't realize is like wild to me.
I know.
Like, how do you not know? Like, how did it manage? How, part of me is like, how do you not notice? But then also is like, well, how did it manage to not like hit the platform or do anything at Tremblay?
Yeah,
that, you know,
exactly.
how did that happen? You know, so I hope that there will be an investigation that answers some of those questions soon, quickly.
David, what are your thoughts on this?
It's a shame. Like, okay, second, like you mentioned, it's the second one in 6 weeks. Like, it's been already from the get-go, people were not really a big fan of the line. I think, like, we made a video, like, I think, what was it, like 2 months back, talking about the first up to now for the old train, like the build up to the opening and everything since then. And like, honestly, it's really bad. Like, public trust is eroded. Like, people, I don't think a lot of people are looking at Line 1 as being the transitway replacement it was meant to be as of right now. Like, it's a shame, really, because from a practical standpoint, it's so much. Well, it should be so much better than the transitway. Like, it's modern. It's in my opinion, it's a lot more comfortable in terms of train sets than being in a bus with the diesel and everything. It's the air conditioning, everything. Like, the stations are a lot more spacious. Like, it's a good place to wait. And I'm sure they're not completely covered and closed. Like, that's been hot issue for a while. But this part of track, especially, I think is going to need either to be redesigned, like to have that segment of track with the Erdmann curves. So, like, anyone riding the train knows it's either rough or noisy or both, if you're depending on the time of the year. How much of it is attributable to the track itself? How much of it is due to the trains? It's hard to know, really, at this point. I really hope the independent experts they're getting, and that there's accountability and there's really something done to properly fix it. Not just say, yes, it's going to be better and put the blame on RTM and say, yeah, it's RTM responsibility, they're going to fix it. Like, no, like, I think we're due for a really concrete, definitive plan that shows that both the city and RTM cares, because I don't think we had a bunch of people claiming, just get rid of RTM, like, bring it in-house, it's going to solve a bunch of the issues. I don't think we can say that at this point.
I think
go ahead, Seth.
I was just going to say, I think the key word that you just said was accountability. Like, I think there needs to be some sort of determination of exactly whose responsibility it is to go and fix it, you know, and make sure that this line is operating to the kind of standard that the public expects. Because, you know, at the end of the day, like, this is Canada's capital. Like, you want to have it be functioning at a level that is that shows the city well, you know, and that allows, you know, people to go where they need to go in the city, whether that's for work or for recreation. Like, it needs to be more of a priority. So yeah, no, I guess my thoughts are with Ottawa. You know, my thoughts are also with the two lines here that are going to use the Citatus, and I'm thinking, like, oh, are we gonna? How is that going to go? But yeah, no, I hope that some lessons are really learned from this.
Yeah, because, I mean, you know, it's been open for 2 years now. They've been running the trains up and down this line for, you know, a couple years prior to that, to varying degrees. And, you know, for a public transit system that had some struggles with public perception and acceptance before this line opened, this was really sold as, you know, this is going to be the answer. This is going to fix a lot of issues. It's going to be more reliable. And I still feel that, you know, when it runs, it is better with the train than taking the bus through the downtown core. I remember even back when I was going to Algonquin back in you know, the early 2000s, just going from Algonquin in the west to Orleans in the east, passing through downtown. How many times was I stuck on the bus for 45 an hour and a half just to go through 10 traffic light intersections to the downtown core because of a snowstorm, because of a broken bus. So the train, bang, you know it's going to go. If the train is running, you're going to get through the downtown in a couple minutes, guaranteed, the same amount of time every time. And it works great for that. And you know what? It creates a nice image for the city. I want to see it succeed. I think we all want to see it succeed. I think everybody in the city, whether they're a supporter or not, secretly want it to succeed. But when you see something like this, you know, the public perception, the trust is really lowered. And I think for a lot of people, it's just completely destroyed at this point because, you know, another 3 weeks, we've even had counselors going out onto the line, you know, in the past little bit there, like last week, riding the replacement bus, and it's taking them like 30-40 minutes longer just to get downtown in some cases. They really need to find what is the factors that are causing all these issues, or what's not being done to address this, or is it maintenance, is it just lack of oversight or inspections, or they're just waiting for stuff to fail, or like it doesn't make any sense how it just feels like you know, we had a good run for a couple months there, but how it feels like it gets, every time something significant like this happens, it just feels like it gets worse and worse and worse. And this right here is by far, you look at the picture, I mean, this is by far the worst thing that's happened yet. So hopefully when it does make a comeback in the next couple weeks there, things are on track, literally and physically, that this doesn't continue to happen, because, you know, this can't keep happening. It just can't.
And it brings up a bit of the elephant in the room kind of question. Stage 2 is underway. It's being built. Like it's there. I'm not saying like I'm definitely not saying we should back out of stage 2. That's not what I'm saying. But like, if those issues are not figured out by stage 2, the bus network in the city is going to be like already completely different. It's going to like all the eggs are in the same basket kind of thing, if I can put it this way. All the eggs are on line 1. Like the bet is that line 1 is going to succeed and have enough capacity for future developments, like for extension of the line, but also for the city growing. But at this point, like R1 is not a solution, no. Period. Like even if you have buses going directly from Blair to downtown, like it's not a solution. It's a band-aid that's really not even ideal in normal situations. So there needs to be a profound reflection by city staff, by RTM, by pretty much everyone involved, and like get it to work out. Like I think we're way past the pointing finger pointing and stuff like that, and like outcry on the social media at this point. It's really it's a really big question of accountability, like public accountability, and showing that they genuinely care. Because a topic for city transport for a number of years is I don't think the city cares. I don't think I don't think a lot of the population even cares anymore at this point. Like it's the first month I used to be in a work from home arrangement for up to the end of August. It's the first month I buy a bus pass since I graduated university, and honestly, I just took the car a whole month. Like. I mean, I took the train up to the point where with the derailment, but like I'm not gonna go, even living at Blair, I'm not gonna go take the R1 for 45 minutes for a commute that can take 15 minutes by car, 15 minutes by train. Like it's ridiculous, and it's painful. But I have that luxury. That's the thing. like a lot of people don't have that luxury. They stuck waiting for the R1. They're stuck trying to find other routes that are probably getting anyway service cuts because they need the trains for R1. It's just frustrating.
It's frustrating, and like you said there, the bus service doesn't supplement the train at all satisfactorily. I mean, no matter what you can do, you can pull as many buses to run this replacement service, but then you're sacrificing the bus service in other areas of the city. We can say that, well, we're fortunate that we're in, a lot of people are working from home, so the demand is less. But let's not forget, we're still in a pandemic here, and there's people at risk, and nobody wants to be standing on top of somebody else, whether you're wearing a mask or not. Hopefully everybody's wearing a mask, though. You don't want to be standing on top of people, risking your life, risking giving it to somebody else, little children who can't be. So I mean, it's a situation that, there's a bit of tolerance as far as being a pandemic. There's lower ridership. Well, good.
It's
good,
not an excuse.
damn good. There's low ridership. You don't want people to have to be, interacting with other people. I mean, I'm not going to say that transit is a vector for getting COVID and all that, but you don't want people huddled up together. The train was working well to help give people space, and based on the pictures, it seemed like people had ample opportunity to space out. On the bus, that's completely gone. So obviously 3 weeks of this is very disappointing for people. And I'm a big supporter. I started this whole platform and I started this whole thing with the O train originally. I don't want to see this continue more because this is just ridiculous. They need to smarten up and they need to get this fixed. I'm putting it flat out there. It has to be fixed.
Yeah.
People can't deal with this anymore. And whether they have meetings all the time or whether stuff needs to happen, I don't know if replacing RTM is the proper solution or not, or bringing it in-house, because anything like that is going to generate other issues along with it, right? Oh, let's get another train. How long is it going to take to get another train? A couple more years?
And which train?
And which train, right? And that's not going to be cheap. Getting another maintenance company or bringing it in-house, how quickly is that going to happen? They're not up to speed. However good the current proponent is, how long is it going to take to get other people up to speed? It's probably going to be the same or potentially worse for a given amount of time before we see any change or improvement, if there is even an improvement. So, I'm not saying let's stick with what we got, but what we have right now has to do better.
Yeah, they have to make it work. It's not a case of, oh, well, they can fall back on something else. There's no fallback. It's by design. There's no fallback. Like the whole argument with Line 1 was, oh, well, once the line's open, we don't need as many bus drivers. We don't need as many buses. Well, it was all pointing towards something happening at a point or another. Like, I know, I keep saying, like, I've been tooting my horn for the last 2 years saying Line 1 is great, Line 1 is great. But I think I still think it's great. I still think it's better than what we had. But gosh, please throw us a bone there. Like, I don't know. Like, don't just come out and say, oh, we'll make transit free for December. That's not the solution. Like, I don't think commuters right now care about getting free transit for a month. Commuters want to be able to trust the system, and I don't think they're making the decisions in the right direction for that. First of all, and I don't think that trust is going to be built. Like, I don't think bringing it in-house is the solution. I don't think, but also don't believe that staying with RTM is the solution by itself. We need a lot more, like the word again, accountability, but I think it should be all hands on deck and not just, oh yeah, like they've been bad, like we'll cut their payment. No, don't just cut their payment. Make it hurt. Like, at this point, it's not time like to just say, oh well, let's it's not time to say, let's stick with what we have and it's gonna get better at some point. No, like, have a plan. Show that you care, show that you know what you're doing, and then we'll go from there. But at this point,
Because that's exactly what people want to know right now. When is it going to work properly, and can I trust it?
Yes.
I'm not against free transit, because you look at Calgary on the C train, the portion downtown, it's a free no fare zone, right?
Yeah.
There's other cities around the world that have implemented free transit where you can ride around. I mean, that's a debate for another time. So I'm not going to frown upon letting people ride transit for free. But when you're trying to get people to come back after they've been wronged, screwed, let down, inconvenienced, I can't even think of other words right now, but I mean, it's ridiculous, right? You want to get from point A to point B. Like, if you're going to drive and it's going to take you 30 minutes to an hour to get to work, or you can take transit and it'll take, let's say, 45 minutes, but you have no guarantee that you're going to get there on time, day in, day out. That's when people start leaving. And we need to fix that. That needs to get fixed. Because it's been 2 years, and I can understand there's been issues. Montreal's Metro had issues when they introduced the Zero trains. I'm sure Seth can nod his head. The TR Rockets had issues when they first came into play.
The Rockets had issues. The Flex Cities had issues. Everything, like whenever they move to a new supplier that, there's a design that isn't built on something that already existed. You end up with issues the more radical a departure a new vehicle type is of any kind. But to see this level of issue is something that needs some immediate redress of some kind.
So just on a side note, David, I know that you had limited time. Are you still good to stay, or did you need to check out?
I can stay a bit more, probably not for forever, but I can definitely I like that. It feels good to be able to vent about that. So, but I think if I can put my last words on that, it's the burdens on OC Transport in the city to show they care. I think they have to hold RTM accountable. They have to hold Alstom accountable. And I know the way the contract is made, it's RTM's responsibility to hold Alstom accountable. But at this point, I start firsthand, if you have the chance to if anyone has the time to go out by there or just watch see the pictures on you don't on the Railfans website, or if you go on the CTV on Twitter, it's not minor. It's definitely not a minor issue at this point. We're way past the it's just a bogey that went off track while there was not in service leaving Turney's pasture. We're in a whole other ball game, and at this point, there's a lot of answers that need to be public, that need to be honest, audited, and genuinely cared for, more than just saying, yes, they'll fix it. We're way past that.
I mean, the point that gets to me too is, and a lot of people have remarked about it, it crossed Riverside Drive over the rail bridge before it finally came to a stop. I mean, I'm not totally concerned that it could have come off the bridge and fallen down below, because I mean, there's some, stuff on the sides there that I don't think it would have gotten that far. But where it did come off, I mean, it's sort of on a bit of a berm, like an embankment kind of thing, the train, or anywhere else along the line where that could be the case. Who's to say that it couldn't have been much worse? There was only 12 people plus one operator on this train. It can easily hold around 600 people, two couple trains together, 600 people. There's more weight. Maybe it could have drifted off more. Maybe it wouldn't have gone that far. But I'm a little concerned by that. How could it have gone for so long? Maybe because the operator at the front. I mean, I'll be, we don't know. We're not experts here, right? But maybe he couldn't detect it. It was it wasn't. He's in the lead train. It was the other coupled train behind that suffered the derailment, right? So maybe he wasn't the wiser. The thing was already rough as it is around that area. So maybe he just didn't know any better, right? That anything was actually wrong, or couldn't even feel anything. And maybe there wasn't enough people in the back to actually have the insight. Hey, you know what? Maybe I should pull the brake or something, or signal to them on the intercom that maybe something happened. So maybe something like that happened, but why the train didn't detect that it came off?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, like I'm a big skier. I'm the last thing I'm going to say about this. And you look at Doppelmayr, you look at Poma, Leitner Poma, and all that. The gondolas, the chairlifts, they have they're hanging with the grip on a rope, the hull rope, right? And they go over sheaves like the wheels, the pulleys on the towers, right? There's a rope position detector. If it pops off, the thing will immediately shut down.
Yeah.
Why the train, when it has only so many bogies, doesn't have some detector that, hey, like even in your car, every wheel has a speed sensor from the ABS. It knows that the wheel is moving or it's locked up or it's not turning. How does it not know that the wheel isn't turning anymore? Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Like something like they need to investigate this. And I honestly, if anybody's listening here, I want to know answers on this. Like how does it not stop? It doesn't make any sense.
It
It's
should.
concerning.
Like I know I've tweeted about that, saying like it should. Why didn't no one pull the emergency cord? And like Ken Woods on the Twitter made the point that if you're driving the train, you probably don't notice it. Like if it's not, it's automatic train control. Like your job is the driver's job is mostly to monitor what's going on around, not the train itself. The train is supposed to monitor itself. It's computerized throughout. There's not a single thing that's not computerized on those trains. So it's really like,
it's a situation of, if there's something wrong, I'm expecting that the train's going to tell me that there's something wrong, but it didn't. So that's all we can say about that. I don't know if Seth had anything else to say before we move on there. I know we were going to talk very little about this, but obviously it's a situation and we're passionate about it. So
yeah, for sure, I totally understand. I think there's nothing more that I can really add to that you guys haven't talked about. I just hope that there is, thorough investigation, thorough answers, and that the Canadian transit industry as a whole is able to benefit from that those learnings will end up being applied to other lines. Because hey, look, we've got the Eglinton line opening in a year or two, hopefully a year, which also will have an ATC system. So this is going to have repercussions.
And like, just make it speaking of CBTC, like it's not the CBTC the issue. Like, just make that clear. Like Celtrac, so like not Alstom, but I think Celtrac, like Thales. Yeah, it's a system that's been used like throughout the world. It's not. At first, everyone was pointing the blame on that. It's not there. Like the issue is somewhere else. It could be how it's implemented on the trains, because obviously for those that might not be like fully aware, Alstom does offer their own CBTC implementation. It's I don't know why they went with the with Celtrac over the Alstom built-in solution. I think it's a question of procurement that and also like in terms of capacity, I think they can run closer together than what the Alstom implementation does. But like it's not. I think at this point we're really in the engineering questions. Like I don't think it's a general practice kind of question. It's really a question of how the whole thing is going. So yeah.
We're going to move on from this now. And so we're going to go to questions now. So we have a couple questions in the chat. So first question is from Nick SSAA. So his question is, well, isn't York Mill sort of similar in terms of it being difficult to TOD around it? So I think this was in I can't remember which one. I think this was either I don't know.
I think we're still talking about Crosstown.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there's a station at Jane on the Crosstown West Extension that has a lot of parkland around it and isn't really amenable to TOD. And then we also talked a little bit on the North Yonge Extension, where the question of whether Royal Orchard should be built, because there isn't a lot of opportunity to build around it. The thing with York Mills is, yes, it is also down in a valley, close to the Don Valley West branch there, but you'll see close to the station. I mean, the station itself is built under an office building, so there is development around that area, and there is a proposal to build on the northwest corner of that intersection as well. So it is in slightly less difficult of a position in terms of TOD being built around it. Jane is sort of unique in that it's on a flat area, like it's part of Eglinton Flats. So like you physically can't build there because, I mean, also I think the Humber River has I forget exactly what the situation is there with respect to the floodplain maps, but I know that the Humber River has some significant flooding potential that I don't know if the West Don Branch has to the same degree. So yeah, Jane on Eglinton ends up being sort of a unique case that it'll more or less always only be for surface route intermodal transfers as opposed to local development.
Yeah. Okay. But every line has pass-through stations like that. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't see it like as like sometimes like I think sometimes we get us all like too focused on the old transit-oriented redevelopment / development question. Transit lines need to get people where they need to go, and if I don't think it makes sense to just not build stations on long stretches just for the excuse of we cannot redevelop that's what's there. Like there's bus lines anyway that passes through like that part of town. Like there's still going to be ridership. It's just not going to, like, you cannot have all stations be the biggest station on the line. It's always going to be like that.
Yeah, and it's important that Jane has a station because it is an important surface route transfer. The Jane bus is one of the higher trafficked routes on the TTC. And, back to the whole social element again, a lot of the neighborhoods that the Jane bus passes through are more economically disadvantaged, and there's a higher percentage of transit-dependent riders. So it is important to offer connections for folks on that route, so they're not going too far out of their way when it comes to transferring to the rapid transit network.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we'll go on to the next one. It's a bit of a statement, so I think we can reply to it. So, good evening.
Hello.
I don't see Finch opening before Eglinton.
It is going to be interesting to see. I am hopeful that Eglinton will open before Finch at the end of the day. There's been sort of this, I think, razzing among the railfan community about Finch being ready before Eglinton is, and a lot of that has to do with the underground portions of Eglinton, like Yonge especially. Lesser extent, the transfer at Eglinton West / Cedarvale, but Yonge and Eglinton really hit some slow periods in terms of the construction, just because of some of the engineering challenges they found when they were digging up part of the underground infrastructure that hasn't seen the light of day since 1954. You find awkward surprises when you start doing that. So unfortunately the Yonge and Eglinton area saw some surprises that set back the opening. Whether that sets it back another 2 years remains to be seen, although you look at the photos of the station progress to date, and Yonge and Eglinton, like, I don't remember whether they're even finished removing material from that stretch. I know they've dug under the subway line, but they're still very much in the building the bones of the station. They're not into anywhere close to like laying track or fit up or anything. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because the rest of the line could be built, but because Metrolinx is so bent on opening the whole line at once, Yonge and Eglinton then becomes a linchpin, and you can only work so fast. Like, when the whole line is under construction, you can kind of phase things and have one crew working in one area at one time and then shift to a different area of the line like another day for another like month or so when timing allows. But if you have like this one part of the line that you need to like focus all your resources on, it can only go so fast because you need to wait for concrete to cure, and you need to wait for different trades so they aren't like climbing over top of each other to do all their work. So that is going to be the test to see when the line opens, is when Yonge and Eglinton can be brought online.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's our next question. I also want to invite, again, people that are watching, if you want to ask us questions or comments or anything like that, please use the chat below the YouTube stream here to let us know, and we'll do our best to answer them. So here comes a question from someone we all know. Oh, that's me. Can you tell us a bit about your ALRV poster behind you, please?
You wanted to feature that. Well, this is the 100th year of the TTC being a public organization, and to celebrate that, the TTC put up a number of commemorative items for sale on its website. This is one of overhead. This is one of the posters that was for sale, and actually, if you come to Toronto, you can see that these are banners that are hung on the streetlights as well, coming down Yonge Street in the area near the TTC's headquarters, which I also happen to live by. So I get to see this photo when I walk out my door and see all the banners going down the street. It was really nice to see that sort of touch, that public transit is being celebrated in the city, that it's being recognized, publicly like that, because the TTC is a fundamental organization in the city of Toronto. It really helps Toronto be the city that it is. We wouldn't see the kind of developments, along all of these concentrated corridors like we do without a really robust public transit system. And I think that it's nice to give the TTC, the credit where credit is due for that in the public realm. I just had to have this poster.
I'm just gonna interrupt just for one moment. I know David has to go, so thank you very much, David, for joining us today.
Pleasure as always. It was a fun chat.
Yeah,
and good venting.
Therapy.
We need it at this point. Anyway, have a nice weekend, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, David. Take care. Okay, and Seth, are you still good for a little bit longer?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So for people that want to look more into this merchandise, it would be available on the TTC shop online?
Yeah, ttcshop.ca. They have a lot of 100th anniversary merchandise.
Okay. Now we have another question. It has to do with when we were talking about the Finch West extension towards the airport. So important to note that while a Finch West extension to the airport would be nice, even if we assume it's extended east to North York Center, for a lot of people, it would just be as fast as taking the subway down to Union and taking the Up Express. Assuming you start at North York Center.
Yeah, this is another one of those statement kind of points. I think so the conversation around extending it to Yonge Street is sort of a separate topic. Originally, the Finch line was intended to run as far east as Yonge Street. It's still part of the roll plans you see if you go on Metrolinx's website. But that was really when it was a transit city line supposed to be operated under the TTC. When the Ontario government decided to resurrect that line following Rob Ford's cancellation of Transit City, they truncated it to only be from Finch west to Humber College. So it remains to be seen whether or not the part to Yonge will end up being revived. I certainly hope it is in the future. It'd be great to see that line actually turned into a proper link across between the two branches of Line 1. That being said, I mean, yes, there is, a time question of whether you go to downtown and then take Up Express. There's also the public perception of that, because if you go to downtown and then take Up Express all the way back out again, it can feel like a much longer route, because you're not taking as direct of a path. Like if you're conscious of where you're going, you feel like you're going way off track to just go right back out again. And you're also going through, some of the busiest parts of the city. So there will be a certain segment of people that, for whom, taking the subway to the Up Express might seem to make sense. But for a large segment of the public, if you look at those routes, the perception would be that Finch would be a more convenient or more straightforward way, anyway, of getting to the airport. But I don't think that the priority should just be on serving people from Yonge Street. Like there's a good portion of that route that is intended for folks who live, work, want to go to recreational opportunities, throughout the northwest of the city. I think the airport is one aspect of what that line could be in the future, assuming an extension does go forward, but it's certainly not the end all and be all. And I think that sometimes the discussion around what light rail is meant to do starts prioritizing these like longer regional connections to a greater degree than I think the point of light rail is really meant to be. It's meant as a community kind of service. It's meant to serve a lot of different kinds of travelers along the way. So Finch will not end up being some sort of high speed outer orbital line by any means, but it'll be more of an urban corridor kind of solution.
Now, another question again from Nick. What's going on with Eglinton East?
So that was a project we didn't really talk about, because in addition to all of the ones that are under construction or have had some sort of MOU signed or are in the process of going like through all the design work, Eglinton East is it's the city's priority. It's not prioritized by Metrolinx, and so they don't even feature it when they start talking about all the different projects that they're working on in the region. So it kind of exists in this limbo state of, is it happening, is it not? The Eglinton East project would extend Line 5 from the terminus at Kennedy out to University of Toronto Scarborough and potentially to Malvern. And that is a significant extension of the line. People forget how large Scarborough is, but that would be a almost a whole another line in itself, tacked on to the end of the existing Line 5 plan. So what's happening with it right now is the city has identified it as a priority project, and they have already decided they're going to allocate funding to that had previously been collected in the form of taxes for the Scarborough Subway project back when Rob Ford was mayor and before Doug Ford's government took over planning for the subway extensions, which included supplying funding for the Scarborough Subway. So now the city of Toronto is kind of sitting on this pot of money that was meant to go toward transit expansion in Scarborough, but is not going to the Scarborough Subway. So they're thinking that Eglinton East would be an appropriate place to then spend that money. That's not going to cover the entire cost of Eglinton East. It would need 3-level government support. And so that's why it's existing in this state of limbo, because the province, it seems like Metrolinx is kind of pretending they don't see it right now. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they eventually do recognize it as a project that the city is interested in seeing go forward. But it would almost, in some ways, it would feel like an eastern counterpart to Finch West in terms of the functions that it would serve, because it would link an institution of higher learning, UTSC instead of Humber College. And it would also go through areas of the city that are rather economically disadvantaged, like the areas around Galloway and Lawrence East, where it crosses there at Morningside. So, it serves and also the terminus at Malvern, which must be said. And so I think, it serves a number of, like we said, those city building objectives. It just remains to be seen whether or not Metrolinx recognizes it as having that sort of region building significance to agree to fund part of it.
All right. Well, it seems to be it for the questions for now. So if there's no further questions, I guess we're going to wrap up this RailChat. So thank you very much, Seth, for joining us today. Again, thank you again to David, who left just a little while ago. It was great talking about, obviously, and there's even more to talk about in the Greater Toronto Area. It's shocking when you go look on the Metrolinx website and you see, and it's like a full page, and there's probably about 5 or 6 different sections, and each one has at least 6 or 8 items in it. It's like unbelievable to see the growth.
the directory of projects going on is quite something. I mean, we didn't even talk about Go expansion, and that is intended to turn most of the Go train system into not quite metro, but close to metro frequencies, and have a lot of grade separations, have a lot of two-way all-day service, and so essentially this region is seeing an explosion of investment in transit. And sometimes you have to take a step back and think of the bigger picture of what's all happening here, because you kind of get lost in the weeds of like individual projects before you realize, oh, we have like 10 different projects to talk about just within 100-kilometer radius of here, and that is quite something. So we're lucky. We're living through an interesting time in a transit renaissance in this area.
Well, Toronto definitely is a big city, and it definitely needs a lot of connectivity, and definitely helps create jobs, growth, opportunity, convenience, and necessity for a lot of people to be able to expand on what there is and to further enhance it for people. So definitely great to see that happening, and we definitely hope people are well served moving into the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess signing off, best wishes for Ottawa as well. I hope that I hope there's more happy things to talk about soon. I hope there's more that can be said about stage 2 in the future, because I know talk about large expansions. That's also quite big, in terms of the relative scale of the cities. So I'm hoping to hear more positive developments coming out of Ottawa soon.
Yeah, I think we all are. Well, thanks again, Seth, and we'll talk again soon. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on the stream. And be sure to subscribe below and join our Discord server, where you can talk to us further and ask more questions, and join the community. So thanks again, and have a good evening.
Thank you.